In the day-to-day operations of handling food, many decisions need to be made about quality. It is important to know where your food comes from, how it's sourced, how to process it, how to store it, and the best cooking methods to match it. These tutorials will take you on your learning journey. Supply chain. There are up to 50 kinds of snapper which can be caught all around Australia. For example, there's saddletail snapper, red emperor snapper, gold band snapper, and crimson snapper, just to name a few. Snapper and other whitefish are caught by nets, traps, and hooks. Fishermen use location sounders and species-appropriate fishing gear to ensure the majority of the catch is the targeted species. Baited traps are set in water ranging from 2 to hundreds of meters. Traps have holes to let unwanted species escape, and they are also designed so that if they are lost at sea, they fall apart so as not to trap or injure marine life. Line, which is when a baited hook is attached to a line. Once the fish are caught, they are then checked for legal limits and species. If the fish do not meet the limits, they are returned to the seas. The fish is then chilled until the core temperature is close to 0 degrees Celsius, and then stored in tubs until the unload at the mainland, where they are transported in refrigerated trucks to processors and distributors. Farmed barramundi are grown in the following grow-out systems where strict environmental systems apply: ponds, recirculating tank systems, and sea cages. Fingerlings are produced in a hatchery and are grown to 30 to 100 millimeters. They are then transported to grow-out systems. Barramundi can grow at a rate of 40 centimeters a year, so it takes as little as 18 months to 2 years to reach marked size, such as plate size, often cooked whole, or larger, for fillets. The barramundi are then harvested, chilled, and transported to processors, retailers, and restaurants. Processing.
So first off, we're going to be covering fish filleting. Then we're going to move on to cleaning and gutting. And for all this, I'm going to ask our #1 fish filleter at Catalano Seafoods to come in and help demonstrate. But before we get started, we need to go through all the tools that we need necessary to fillet and clean fish. So starting with a fresh, clean apron, a chain protective glove, some protective gloves, and an array of knives. So when it comes to fish filleting, the most important thing is you take care of your knives. A sharp knife gives clean cuts and better yield. So there is some different knives you will follow for different processes, which we'll touch on later on. You'll also need a cleaning squidgy. So we're here with Eddie from Catalano Seafoods, and we're going to be demonstrating fish filleting. So before we start, we're going to have a quick checklist on all our protective equipment. So the fish is on ice, protective chain glove, apron, protective gloves to stop any germs, sharp filleting knife, and a squidgy. This will help us clean up any spillages that we may have. So before Eddie makes any cuts on this fish, it's important to understand where the fillet may lie. So typically on a snapper or a white fish, such as this saddletail snapper, a fillet will lie just behind the head piece, down past the side pectoral fin, in towards the anal fin, at the end of the tail here, and then back up to the top fin. So basically it'll sit in this section here. So Eddie's first cut is going to happen just behind the head. He's going to go down past this side fin or the fish wing towards the stomach. Once he's made that incision, he then turns the fish into a better position. Now the reason he's doing that is because he wants to get a nice close cut inside this head here, because there's a little bit more flesh, and that's obviously going to give you a better yield when you're cutting this fish. He then rechanges his hand grip, angle of the blade, and then cuts along to the back of the tail of the fish. So with every cut, Eddie tries to keep as close to that backbone as possible. Once he's made that cut down to the tail of the fish, he repositions his hand and grabs the skin, not the flesh. We're always trying to protect the delicate flesh. Long, smooth cuts, trying to get as close to that backbone as possible, once again to get a better yield. He then flicks up and cuts that main pin bone on the fish here. Small incisions, he then cuts over the rib cage and releases the fillet all the way away. So there we are, the first side of the fillet's ready for pin boning and skinning. As Eddie turns the fish over here, he readjusts himself. He makes sure he's at a decent distance away from the bench, and then he makes those same incisions as he did before. So this time he starts at the belly and cuts towards the head. Once again, getting inside there for a better yield, he readjusts his knife, the knife pressing hard against the backbone of the fillet. Long, thin, smooth, all the way down the fish. The second one comes from the tail up towards the head. That's allowing him to have some movement with his hand again. Grabs onto the skin with the thumb. Small cut, cuts away the pin bone, over the belly cage, and the fillets away. So now we have our 2 fillets off. We're not going to throw away the bones, but we're going to clean down our bench and we're going to move on to skinning and pin boning. So the first part for skinning and pin boning is to get your fillet ready. So you want to trim away any belly part here. See, it's nice and ugly. You don't want any of this going into your cooking. So we're going to cut that away. He's then going to make an incision at the tail part here. And he's cutting down to the skin. He's going to turn his knife flat to the board and he's going to push some pressure. He's going to make a few incisions there. Then he's going to readjust his hand, get a nice grip of the tail, and then cut all the way through. So as you can see, the majority of your flesh is all here and none left on the skin there. Once again, it's all about getting a better yield. So here we have our skinned fillet ready for pin boning. So generally speaking, especially with a fish like a saddle-tail snapper, the main pin bone runs along this center bloodline. Basically, if you get your thumb or your index finger, you can actually feel the pin bone here. So all we're going to try to do now is cut either side of that pin bone. So there you have it, a skinned and pin bone fillet ready for portioning. So now we're coming back to the fish frame. A lot of this can be used for many different other uses. However, there is some parts there that you don't want to use, which is the gill inside the head and obviously the stomach. So Eddie's going to demonstrate now by cutting away the fish wing away from the head. Small incision, twist of the knife, very simply removed. So now Eddie wants to come in here and remove this gill part away from the head. So he's going to cut in on that angle there. Once again, twist of his knife and it's going to remove. So simply pulling it away, you need to clean up these wings now. So the gill goes away, cleaning up the wings just by using your knife, small incisions either side of the wings. So to remove the head from the backbone, we basically use a strong support hand on the edge of the bench. So holding down securely, quick little angle, and then push down away. And that backbone will come straight off. So there we have our 3 parts of the offcuts of the fish that can be used for different uses. The fish wing, the fish backbone, and the fish head. So now we're on to fish cleaning, getting it prepared for whole cooking. What we like to call it in the industry is scale, gill and gutting. So there are 3 processes that you'll need to do to prepare this fish. You'll need to remove the gills, the scales and the gut. So what we'll need to prepare this fish is a sharp knife with a stiff blade and a fish scaler. So before we start scaling this fish, we need to understand how the scales are attached to this fish. So if you see here, there's small little scales, lots of them all along the fish. And basically as the fish swims in the ocean, they're all running this way. So a fish scale is sitting inside a skin pocket, which is attached to the fish. So if we run the scale across the back of it, those scales will come out of the pockets. So as Eddie starts to scale this fish, he's working in a motion from the tail towards the head. You do need to be careful, these scales will flick off. He's also done the top half of the fish, now he's moving on to the bottom half of the fish. If you notice, he's got his hand right at the base of the handle, keeping his hands and fingers away from any sharp spikes that are on the barramundi. So now he's removed all the scales on the first side, he repeats the process on the second. So he starts on the top side of the fish, then to the bottom side of the fish, and through the middle. As you can see, these scales are quite big and they're sitting in pockets of the skin. So now that Eddie's finished scaling, we're going to clean down the bench and get ready for gutting. So now Eddie's removed all the scales, we need to take out the gill and the gut, get it ready for cooking. So basically he's going to come inside here where the top of the wing meets the head. He's going to stick his knife in there and give it a quick turn, cut that away. So now he needs to remove the gill from the wing. So that frees up the gill away from the wing. So now he's going to take the knife and stick it in the anus of the fish and slide it up towards the wing. Now he's not sticking the knife all the way in because we don't want to damage the flesh up this far. So he's just cutting that cavity of the stomach. From the wing, just a bit of pressure through the wing and you're through. So now once he opens up the fish, you can see where all the gill is and the guts, and he's basically just going to cut that away. So now once all the guts and gills are removed, you need to wash this fish. Now, you either use cold running water or icy cold water. So rinsing out the fish, making sure we have no impurities. So there we have a nice clean barramundi.
Receiving and storage.
G'day Shana, how you going?
Morning, Chef, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Today's fresh fish delivery.
Thank you very much. When receiving fish, we need to make sure that the box is nice and intact so there's no damage on the way from the fishmonger. We want to check on the side to make sure it's our fish and the species of fish that it is, just to make sure it's correct. Then we're going to open up the box. And there's ice on top. There needs to be ice on top. Double checking. Pull that to the side. And now checking the fish. Now checking for quality of the fish, you want to make sure that the fish is nice and shiny and moist, no scale damage or bruising. Then we need to check the gills to make sure they're nice and light, mouth for debris, checking the eyes, they're nice and beady and clear. Of course we need to smell the fish, and it smells all good, and we're ready to go. Straight back into the box. We also need to then check that the weight is matching up with the invoice. That's important. Then we can sign her off. Both dockets, one for them and one for us. Before storing the fish into the cool room, we want to put some drainage holes in the esky. So, like this, nice and easy. Then we need to put some fresh ice over the top, nice cold frozen ice over the top of the fish. That's going to keep it super cold, and that's super important. Some of that fresh ice over the top as well. Oh. Nice and evenly covered. Lid back on. And then into the cool room. So now we're in the cool room and we need to put the fish on top of a tub. Remember, it's got the drainage holes to let all the dirty water back out of it, all the smelly water. What we then need to do, every day we need to make sure we rechange the ice, rechange the tub. That'll make your fish hold a lot longer and stay fresher for longer.
Preparation. Cooking method. Deep frying.
Cookery method, deep frying. If you don't have a temperature controlled fryer, use a heavy base pot with a good Australian oil, spider or a slotted spoon, pair of tongs, absorbent paper for draining, and of course, wonderful Australian fish. To make sure your oil is hot enough for deep frying, put a little bit of the crumbing mix in. Now this should not sink to the bottom but stay on the top and turn a lovely brown colour. Perfect. Deep frying tips: put your fish into the oil, wave it gently, and then let it just slide away. So using your spider, take the fish from the pot, shake off the excess oil, and then lightly drain. Presentation of deep fried, white fleshed Australian fish, coconut crumbed. And we've just got this with a little bit of spring salad. And there you have it, deep frying.
Cooking method. Baking.
Cookery method, baking. Baking is the application of dry heat in an oven. The difference between roasting and baking is that roasting has the addition of oil. I've preheated the oven to 170 degrees, dry heat for 20 minutes. Voila. So it's been 20 minutes, open the door, let a little bit of the heat escape. White-fleshed fish are the most suitable for baking, either fillets or whole. But remember, do not overcook, your fish will become dry. Cookery method baking, and here you have it, Australian baked barramundi. Now I've marinated this barramundi with a little bit of North African spice paste called harissa. Beautiful.
It's important to remember that there are various types of fish fillet cuts, from fingers, steaks, escallops, to butterfly cuts, diced, and more. Always use the appropriate cut for your dish. When applying dry heat to whitefish fillets, here are a few things to remember. It helps to marinate your fillet before baking. Don marinated and sauteed the harissa barramundi before putting it in the oven. Skin on finfish fillets hold together better than skin off fillets. Cooking times may vary according to the cut of your fillet. For a 1 cm thick finfish fillet, you may need 5 minutes in the oven. For a 2 cm thick fillet, you may need 6 minutes in the oven. For a 3 cm thick fillet, you may need 9 minutes in the oven. Nutritional value. Barramundi is a good source of phosphorus, selenium, and omega-3. It is also a good source of protein. Phosphorus transports energy and helps protect the blood's acid-base balance. Selenium is an antioxidant, which assists in maintaining thyroid health and the body's immune system. It also builds resistance to cancer and coronary heart disease. Omega-3 fatty acids contain anti-inflammatory properties, which can reduce the risk of heart disease and arthritis. You can find more nutritional value facts at superseafood.com.au. Seasonality and availability. Always check the seasonality when shopping for fish. You can do that by checking a seasonality calendar. If your preferred option is not in season, ask your supplier for an alternative. Efficient processing. Efficient processing can enable maximal use of raw material, thus contributing to increased economic profitability. For example, you can use wings and heads to make fish stock. Also, a new processing approach can produce mincemeat from the fish frames, and the remainder can be sold as animal feed or fertilizer. This approach results in practically no unused waste or off-cut material,